Well, we've got an EA college football trailer. We've got coaches in crisis. And Garrett, we're ready to fire up the hot takes for 2024 already. All that and more on this episode of The Three Technique.
One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. Oh, the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. No, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Well, welcome in one and all to the Three Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and Joes. I'm Trey Reeves. I'm joined by Mr. Garrett Turney, and we wish Mr. Mason well tonight, as well as he could not be with us for the full show. But Mitch and I got to do a full Cowboys mock draft that's coming to our channel really soon. Make sure you check out that on the channel. Garrett, I mentioned it off the top, but we have a fully loaded show tonight. Tons to talk about. We're getting caught up on some news. Most notably, that we have it back. The EA college football video game is back. That was the big news that broke recently. We've got some coaching talk to get into. We've got SEC win totals to break down. We're going to give you guys our best bets in the way too early portion of this offseason. But Garrett, as we are, winding down the end of February, we're getting into the doldrums of the offseason. Football's officially over unless you're a fan of the XFL or whatever they're calling themselves nowadays. What do you most look forward to in this time of the college football calendar?
I'm looking forward to the XFL or whatever they call them too. We got some defending champion Arlington Renegades just down the road from myself here in Tarrant County, Texas. So we're enjoying that. But no, man, in the college football calendar, man, it gets a little bit slow, but I love our draft coverage. I love what we're doing with the players that we got to kind of fall in love with last year, and now we get to see them off and, say, hey, I wonder where they're going to end up, and start to think about where they do end up once they get in the NFL. And, man, it's just fun. It seems like this is that time of year when, you can kind of snooze through it, but then if you show back up in August, you'll, wait, when did that happen? You go, well, it was February and March. That's when that happened. So, it's fun to kind of stay up to date, stay up on what's happening with college football, because even though it's smaller news right now, I'd be surprised if most people are going to realize, come, start of September, hey, wait a minute, is that Chip Kelly on Ohio State's sideline? What's going on there? When did he go to Ohio State? They're going to be, why is the Buckeye offense so amazing now? It's, well, look, there's a new guy patrolling down there on the sidelines. So it's going to be fun to see. And it's just my favorite time of year whenever we're getting the chance to, get back into it, get back into the news in the off season, and really dig through some of these details and draft and all that.
Yeah, the news really doesn't stop now. It seems like there was a time, maybe 5-10 years ago, there was a slow period after National Signing Day before spring ball really kicks up. But with the transfer portal and with NIL and with recruiting never stopping, and now coaches jumping ship in February, we'll talk about that in our second segment tonight. The news cycle just never really stops, and we're here to break it all down for you guys. Before we do, though, I want to tell you about our friends over at Home Field Apparel. The good brand, as our friend Mitch likes to say. Man, they don't stop in the offseason either, and they have tons of good stuff dropping all year long. New schools, new merch, new apparel with their bomber jacket collections and new t-shirt designs dropping all year long. So whether you're a college basketball fan getting ready for March Madness in a few weeks, whether you are just missing the college football season, want to share your school pride, use code 3TechPod for 15% off your first order, and use our link on Twitter to get 15% off any additional order as well. Garrett, Home Field is taking care of us, taking care of our apparel needs. EA Sports is taking care of our nostalgia needs and our emotional needs, and probably in a way that our significant others are not going to be too happy about here in a few months. But that's a problem for down the road, because, there was a lot of hemming and hawing after the national championship game. A lot of people thought we might get a trailer to drop during that Michigan-Washington game.
And we should have.
We should have. They missed a golden opportunity, Garrett, but we didn't get it then. We get it last week. We get the EA Sports College Football 25 trailer. It drops on Twitter. Kind of surprisingly, I think a lot of people were caught off guard. It was kind of a fun little surprise that dropped in our Twitter timelines last week. We have a lot of thoughts, but we wanted to watch it here with you guys and kind of react to it as it unfolds. So, Garrett, without further ado, let's pull that up.
I want to jump in real quick.
Go ahead.
I have actually been saving watching this whole thing for the podcast.
Okay, there we
I have
go.
not seen the entire thing all the way through. I've seen a couple of screenshots, and I've seen like little bits as we were kind of preparing for it to, start the episode. But I have not seen this entire thing all the way through. I was saving it just for the podcast, so we're gonna, I guess, open this up real quick.
Okay, well, I'm gonna let you take it away then, my man, because I did not know that. That's awesome.
I'm
That's a
excited.
dedication to this product you're putting out. So Garrett is going to live react to this trailer. He has not seen it yet. I've seen it, so I'll kind of keep my mouth shut. But without further ado, let's take
all right,
this.
Let's see. Here we go. I like the music choice. It's kind of fun, nostalgic.
Got something special for y'all. A little update for our fans from the Big House to the Bayou, from Carolina to California.
Who's the real UNC? Drop in the comments.
It's about college football. We know you love it. Us too.
I like it.
Rivalries, comebacks, the traditions and superstitions built by generations. There's nothing like it. Turns out, we've been building too.
Yeah, we hope so.
So let's address the big owl in the room. Yeah, we've seen the posts, the predictions, the doubts. We get it. It's been a minute. Let's just say this ain't the only jersey we've been working on. The game this sport deserves. Because pretty soon, this place will be full again. Until then, cue the crowd noise.
Yeah. Really epic. All right. Come on. Full reveal this May.
Yeah,
I love that, man.
It's a good trend, and I'll say so. Pausing right there. So some people think that's an Easter egg right there. That
Okay.
That's 6/17, I think maybe.
Yeah, 6/7. That could be it. Yeah.
That might be the release date. Some people are theorizing that in the tinfoil hat corner of college football Twitter. But
oh man,
what are your thoughts, man? I mean, you got to watch that live for the first time, so I'll turn it over to you. First
crazy.
takeaways from the trailer.
Obviously, like nothing super overwhelming. That's kind of the point of a teaser. I want to scroll though. The comments part first off, that was hilarious. The ability to just kind of look there in the I said, half of those are me, and it's just complaining about EA constantly. Hey, get a game. I'll believe what I said. The little 14-25 was a funny little thing too. This is what I wanted to check out. Are these in-game uniforms?
Yes. Yeah, I've seen that confirmed. Those are mock-ups of what the uniforms look like in the game. Yeah.
That is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually, I mean, look at that. Look at that, man. That's crazy. I'm sorry. I think that's just nuts. That's
so if you're only on the podcast side and you have not seen this trailer yet, or you just kind of breeze through it, like pause on those uniform reveals because the detail in those.
I mean, you can see like stitching. Like they went in to go like see the stitching and all. It's crazy. I love that. And so, man, like the thing for me was with any trailer like this, I was just saying, okay, it's a teaser. Like I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna save it for the podcast. I'm actually really, really excited about this because I think with the teaser, you have to do kind of the marketing thing, right? You have to be able to say like, okay, we're going to acknowledge it. It's been a little while. We've kind of been dragging our feet. Like if they just came out and acted like nothing happened, I think most of us would have been like, well, are you not going to address the big owl in the room as they
big
put
owl
it?
in the room, right?
That's kind of funny. But like, are you not going to address that? Are you not going to say like, hey, we're actually kind of mad because you made us wait so long for it? But hey, I mean, if they're getting it together and, obviously they had the legal stuff that they were trying to work through and if they're even going to be able to make the game. And so The fact that we're this close, I think, is just super cool. I think it's fun to be able to say that we are this close and that we've gotten to the point where now we can go through and say, like, oh, look at this shot of the trailer. Oh, look at that shot of the trailer. Oh, look, the stitching, the helmets, this, and the stadium and the crowd noise and all that. I think that's just kind of fun to be able to scroll through all of that and actually have something to talk about besides just, I wish we had some kind of a game. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be nice to actually have something about the game to talk about.
Yeah, very self-aware trailer for sure, with all the nods to how long it's been, and yeah, it's really happening. I
Yeah.
think that's the best tagline there that they could have possibly come up with. It's really happening, and we're celebrating that over here at 3 Tech HQ. All 3 of us are really excited, have been waiting like children, honestly, for the next iteration of this game to come out since the last one came out in 2013. I know Mitch and I still play our copy of NCAA 14, and we can't wait for this new one to come out. So we wanted to spend this first segment just kind of hyping up this game. We're not paid by EA, obviously. I don't think we would need if they want to sponsor this show. We're all ears, and
I'm not going to be upset about
fantastic.
them giving us their money.
Absolutely not. So EA, if you're listening, go ahead and sponsor us. We're giving you some free pub as a teaser, but we want to just kind of hype up just how excited we are for this game here in our first segment today. And Garrett, is you think back, what we know so far, it's happening. I've seen other reports that Dynasty and Road to Glory are coming back. Those are 2 of the most popular
Mhm.
gameplay modes. If you're not familiar, maybe you weren't into these games when they were first around. Dynasty is literally building a program from the ground up. You start as the head coach or offensive or defensive coordinator, if it's like how it was on NCAA 14. Road to Glory is playing as starting as a high school recruit. So you start, I think, in the old games, I think it was your senior year of high school. You get to start as a
Mhm.
senior. You basically start as a 0-star recruit and work your way up to being recruited by big time programs, and then eventually get to go off and play at that college. So, you know, those 2 game modes, obviously the most popular. They've got to get those right. And, obviously the gameplay is going to be very heavily scrutinized. There's a lot of people that are worried about the Madden engine. We don't need to get into the nuts and bolts of the nerdy side on
Right.
this maybe right now, but what are you most excited about for this game coming out? Is it the dynasty mode? Is it, getting to see the actual players, not just QB 15 for Florida or QB 2 for Texas A&M? What are you most excited about?
Man, I think to obviously you get the game, right? That's the first thing is you get the game. There's some improvements that are kind of obvious and with NIL being able to use the players and their likeness, I get that. Maybe this is just me. I'm way too excited about the mascot games. I know that's kind of the silly part of it. I love the mascot games. I
Y
love
A lot of you're not alone because a lot of people have said, if this isn't in the new game, we riot and we're
no,
not gonna
seriously,
play it.
that's like my favorite thing is just watching a ball get engulfed in a tree and just watching that tree with the goofy face from Stanford, fall over. It's just it's some of the wacky physics, wacky bizarre stuff, but it's fun, like it's the point of a game. You're supposed to have some fun with it. Yes, like there's like the serious part of it, like seeing what you can do, testing yourself and like competing. Like I love that part of it, obviously. But at the end of the day, like sometimes you want to kick your feet up and just have a funny, goofy experience. That's something that I think would be really, really exciting to see back. I know that may be just like the slightly weird take because I'm not talking about actual gameplay or players. I'm just talking about like I want to watch Sparty, and all those like individual Spartans mascots just running around the field again, looking like jacked up guys, and wondering what happened to the steroid era of college football or something like that. I don't know. I think it's fun. I think it's goofy, and I think seeing that but updated and better graphics and everything else, I think would be really really cool.
Yeah, I am really excited about actually getting the players, right? Because
Oh, for sure.
number one, it's they'll finally get a cut because we were, we EA will say, no, we were never using their name, image, and likeness before, but QB number 2 sure looks a lot like Johnny Manziel. And oh, he's a dual threat quarterback that can run really fast and
Hmm.
scramble around. He's a scrambler in the game, right? And getting to actually use that name, image, and likeness, number one, is just going to be cool for us as fans. But imagine how that's going to feel to the third string tight end on
Oh yeah.
your given G5 program, right? Like no one knows your name outside of that program. No one knows your, stat line outside of your fan base probably. But to be able to like hold on to that game and maybe show your kids one day, hey, look, you can
Yeah.
play as your dad in this video
Yeah.
game. That's incredible, right? Like that's something, they kind of had that, and I think the athletes back then would, if they're honest, would tell you, yeah, of course I know I'm playing as me. But to have your name and
Mhm.
your stats, your height, and have it kind of look like you, like that's going to just be incredible. And I'm really excited to see how excited that makes the players, honestly. Like it'll make me excited as a fan to get to play with players that I actually know, but getting to see players experience that'll be really cool too.
Yeah, and that opens up so much with the game as well. One thing that I was wondering about, and obviously there's only so much you can really do with this, but I don't know if they've confirmed or talked about or any of that stuff. But one feature I think would be cool is the kind of customizable teams where you can kind of build your own team with the card based stuff that we see out of like FIFA and Madden and stuff like that, where you have, you know, random card draws and stuff like that. And I'm not saying necessarily just pay to play with packs and everything, but, find some way to get, custom teams together where you can say, like, hey, this is my favorite college, but what would it look like if they had all these different random players and, being able to go online, play as your favorite team, but then you're saying like, oh, I really like, Purdue and, quarterback Mike Vick or quarterback Joe Burrow going out there for the Hawaiians or whatever. It's like, that'd be super fun to just kind of see the different random combos you could get. Similar to how it's kind of goofy to watch that stuff in the Madden games when you're like, oh, I'm looking at a Madden game and, I'm playing as the Cowboys and I've got, Tom Brady out there. You're like, well, something's a little off about this. I think it'd be fun to be able to do that as well, because also there's the other side of it, which I think is more real in college football, which is you might draw a player in a pack who played for your rival, and you're immediately like, no, I don't like this. Like a Longhorn drawing a Johnny Manziel or like an Aggie drawing Vince Young or something. You're just like, I'm not playing as this guy. I don't like him.
Bench him, right?
Bench
Yeah,
him.
bench my 99 overall Vince Young in favor of, whoever is the
The
backup
third
there.
stringer. Yeah.
Yeah, what would be really cool, a twist on that I think would be really cool, is if you could assemble an all-time team for your school. Like maybe not
Yeah.
pulling a
Yeah.
card of like, a Michael Penix going to South Florida, but like, if you're thinking about, you could pick up a Baker Mayfield throwing to I guess he did throw to CeeDee Lamb, but like those types
Gotta
of
go even
players,
further.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like a
Baker Mayfield handing
cross-generational.
the ball off to Adrian Peterson, and then
Exactly,
yeah,
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 thank you for saving my point there with Oklahoma, but, yeah, like a cross-generational thing where obviously there being some advantages to some schools, but, you could get a Caleb Williams handing it off to Reggie Bush, right? Like how
right.
how incredible.
Well, and you brought up the Oklahoma. How about a read option offense with Kyler and Adrian Peterson? That would
Yeah,
just be
like just the
disgusting.
combinations
That's
that you
so
can make
gross.
with that, like, and you kinda get the element of the card version, right? And, like, the build a
Yeah, yeah,
team, but, like, building a super team of players from that program, I think would be
yeah,
really cool.
yeah.
Other
Or just
things.
giving us historic rosters and saying, I just want the 2019 LSU team. I just want to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's something that people are definitely clamoring for from a standpoint of especially those years that we didn't have a game, being able to play as the
Hmm.
2019 LSU Tigers, the 2020 Alabama Crimson
Yeah,
Tide, the Ohio State team, 2015 Ohio State team that won it all.
yeah,
All those teams would be really, really fun to play with, and that's definitely something that the online community has wondered, how are we going to incorporate those people? Other things like, please don't screw up Dynasty. I'm really excited to see
yeah.
how they
Seriously.
modernize it, but I really hope they keep a lot of the elements. The recruiting on NCAA 14 definitely wasn't realistic. Like you were starting to recruit kids in like September of their senior year, and obviously that's not
Right.
how it works in real life. But for the game purposes, obviously most people don't want to spend 90% of their time recruiting like a real college coach does. So, um,
Although it would be nice for perspective, and you'd see a lot of college coaches. Yeah, we'll see. It's not that easy, huh? And then maybe with the new game, you have a new feature where like some guy just leaves your roster. You're like, what happened? So you got $1 million to go play over there.
It will be interesting to see how NIL and the transfer portal are definitely going to be a big part of this game.
Mm-hmm.
And, I can just see it now. Like you scrounge and get this 3-star diamond in the rough recruit to Toledo. He has a freshman All-American season, and whoop, you get a little notification in January that he got offered a Lambo and $1 million to go down to Ohio State. And you're like, well, that's how this is going to happen, I guess. But Garrett, is there anything, we talked about mascot mode. We talked about, just a revamped dynasty, maybe revamped road to glory. What is an off the wall suggestion that you think would make this like just something random that is uniquely college football that would just make this so much more realistic?
I think, hear me out. There used to be the whole, like home field advantage thing, and some places were better with their home field, and some places weren't so good. I think it would be kind of funny if you included. I know they're including like crowd noise, but like include some of those random traditions. Like
Mhm.
make it to where like tortillas and trash and beer cans are getting thrown in Lubbock, right? And there's just random stuff on the field now, and you're like, that's gonna stay there for the first couple drives or whatever.
Oh, your
Um,
quarterback just has a concussion because he got
yeah, you're
whacked
like,
by
hey, I don't know what to tell you,
a
man, but he got conked on the head. Or if it's Tennessee and it's Ole Miss in town, then something bad happens and there's like a riot or whatever. And I don't know. You could also include like storming the field and stuff like that on there.
That would be cool.
Anytime you have like that you could figure it out in the algorithm when it's like your school's down here and their school's up here. If it's like a rivalry or something, that you could trigger it to have like a custom storming the field and tearing down the goalposts and going and finding a shot of them throwing into a river or whatever. It'd be, I don't know, just be something kind of fun to add, and stuff that you don't see in obviously like NFL or Madden, right? You don't see that in the NFL. Nobody's running onto the field at AT&T Stadium and grabbing the stuff at Jerry World and taking the goalpost with them and say, hey, we're taking the uprights, man. We're throwing it in the lake over here in Arlington. You're not doing that, right? That's not
Yeah.
something that's realistic in life, but that does happen in college football. So I think it'd be cool to see some of that get included, some of the random traditions, and I know like that would be kind of hard to program in. It'd be kind of weird to try to figure out how to do all that, but hey, it's off the wall. It'd be kind of fun.
Absolutely. I think field storming especially would be really cool. Garrett, give me message boards. I want to see message boards integrated somehow where have to have the discipline to not read the message board geniuses calling for your job after a loss. And
Could you
you have
have it
to
update real time?
yeah, absolutely. And
Like you throw a pick and it's just
yep.
this guy
I
sucks.
think that would be
Bitch.
hilarious. And you gotta manage. We talked about NIL, obviously, managing your players with that, going to donors to ask for more money would be really interesting.
Oh,
I
that
also
would
hope that there's kind of like sliders on this, maybe in Dynasty that you can have it have more
all the
impact,
way
less
up,
impact.
all
Yeah,
the way
I
up.
mean, I'd be down to try it all the way up
Give me
for
the
sure.
chaos.
But the one other thing
Uh,
that I think would be awesome is, having some sort of just chaos injected in the middle of the season. Like your star quarterback got arrested and you now have to decide, are you going to suspend him for 3 games? Like maybe Jameis Winston steals some crap
right, yeah.
and you have to decide, what are you going to do, coach? Are you going to risk losing the team and, not disciplining him? Are you going to risk losing your job? And I think that'd be hilarious. And if
Yeah.
you remember, I can't remember what year it was. It was one of the like mid 2000s NCAAs. That was part of it. Like
Mhm.
you were playing in dynasty mode, and it would come up. Oh well, your your quarterback's failing a class, so you have to start your backup in this random conference game.
That would be crazy for Dynasty because you could also go into like not just like, oh, like he got arrested or whatever else, but you could also do just like random like, oh, this guy went out and partied, so you know he took 3 guys with him. 2 of them are suspended and 2 of them are hungover or something like that. And it'd just be like, it'd be really funny to kind of see like, oh, so he's still playing, but his speed is down all game.
Yeah, as long as certain players, are. can withstand that, right? Like we all know Johnny
Sure.
Manziel probably played a lot of games hungover,
Oh, for sure.
or
That
actively
was part
drunk
of the
maybe.
charm.
Yeah, and he overcame that. So there should be like a
Yeah.
custom slider for that. Garrett, we are very, very excited for this game. Can't wait to have a lot more content about this game. Stay tuned on the channel for all of the fun things that we are going to do related to NCAA college football. I'll leave it at that for now, but stay tuned. Professional tease right there. It's time to talk about some less fun stuff as we navigate this new world of college football. But first, let me tell you about our friends over at Baller Pickleball. The weather is starting to heat back up. Spring is right on its way, and that means we can enjoy all these outdoor activities that we love. For me and for Garrett and Mitch, that one of those things is pickleball. We love getting out on the court. And with my Baller Pro paddle, I feel like I have an advantage every time I step out there. It has an awesome sweet spot. It's very forgiving, and it's made of really high quality materials that take my game to the next level. You can go shop at ballerpickleball.com. Use the code 3TechPod for 10% off your entire order. That applies to their paddles, their moisture wicking hats, and their equipment bags. All of this stuff can help take your game to the next level, whether you're just a weekender or trying to maybe try your hand at a tournament or try your hand at moving up those local rankings. Check out Baller Pickleball for all your needs. That's BALLR pickleball.com and code 3TechPod for 10% off. Garrett, as we turn the calendar to February, typically the coaching carousel has run its course, right? Maybe there's an NFL hiring or two that kind of shake things up, but this year the thing just hasn't stopped spinning. And we got another big bombshell last week as Chip Kelly, the sitting head coach, mind you, of the UCLA Bruins, moves to the offensive coordinator position at Ohio State, who is now a conference rival of UCLA. So he goes to a conference mate of his current school where he was a sitting head coach and now takes a demotion on paper to become the offensive coordinator. And much has been said about this. Obviously, we're talking about this a little bit after, but it's an insane, pretty much unprecedented move at this point. I know Chip Kelly was kind of not long for UCLA at this point. There was a lot of hot seat talk going into this year. He was very vocal about how unhappy he was with the situation at UCLA. So this move maybe makes sense for him, but it's certainly not a great look when your head coach does this. And, you know, with all the surrounding stuff that he's talked about with NIL and recruiting, and with all the other moves that we've seen, Nick Saban retiring, other coaches being very outspoken, it's a very interesting crossroads that we find ourselves at. As you watch all this unfold, you can't help but feel maybe not sorry for, but it's a really tough time to be a college head coach.
Which is kind of the point here, right? Because you're looking at this. He's not making a jump to a Power Five from a G5, right? We see that happens all the time. He's not even making a jump from like a lesser conference, right? In yesteryear we could say, oh, Pac-12 for Big Ten, maybe. That's not a thing anymore for UCLA. This is a Big Ten school now, and so it's not a jump for Kelly. It's not a jump for him going from like a conference to a conference or like a better program, whatever else. I mean, kind of a better program, but it's not like UCLA is exactly short for cash or just in an awful place. The problem right now just comes down to competitive balance and the fact that I think Chip Kelly, personally, I don't think that he wants to kind of just sit over there and be okay, right? I think he wants to win. I think there's a lot about college football that's changed for some of these coaches where they're going to say, you know what, it's not worth it. I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want to keep, having to struggle to sort of recruit and watch my best players get poached by money from someone else. I don't want to keep struggling to kind of put a team together and then, have to worry too much about keeping a roster together middle of the season. I just want to think about ball. And now that's what he gets to do. He just gets to think about ball. He gets to go to Ohio State, which is a great football program. They got a lot of really great players. They did, amazingly well in the transfer portal. And, now they're in a position where they're able to say, not only have all those things happened, and that not only is all that true, but now we get one of the better signal callers in college football currently available, right? And not just good signal caller, but a guy who's led a program before and can be a voice of leadership in that offensive room. So, man, like this guy, I think has a good fit in Ohio State. Yes, technically a demotion on paper, but I think it says a lot more about the state of college football than it does about one guy taking a job, right? There's a reason why this coaching carousel won't die out. It's because there's so many variables now at play as people are making decisions, as the landscape is shifting, so many other variables are going on. There's so many factors to consider as a coach now that I think a lot of these guys are kind of thinking about it, considering things, talking with agents, figuring out what they have at their school, talking with the AD to figure out resources, and trying to figure out what their best path forward is for their career. Because you got to remember, these are people too.
Yeah.
They get buyouts, they get whatever, but they want to keep employed, right? They want to keep money coming in and not worry about where the next paycheck could be coming from for whatever lifestyle they're used to at this point. So, for Chip Kelly, I think fantastic move. I think it's mutually helpful for Ohio State, but it maybe underpins some bad things for college football, at least in the short term. I don't think long term, but at least in the short term.
As long as Chip Kelly is not using this as a retirement gig, right? I
Right.
that's not something I've heard a lot of people mention the possibility of. There's a slight possibility that, Chip Kelly's looking to just kind of ride off into the sunset and coast off into the sunset.
There's a chance, yeah.
But as long as that's not happening, I think this is a fantastic hire for Ohio State. And I think the odds of him taking their offense to the next level are way, 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 way higher than with Bill O'Brien, the guy they previously tabbed for this position, who is off to be a head coach now in his own right. So I think this is a great move for Ohio State. Anytime that you can pluck a sitting head coach to come run your offense, I think that's a great look for your program. It's a tough look for the other program. We talked a little bit how we think this is a good move for Chip Kelly, just where he's at in his career. He had been very open about how, distraught he was with everything that's going on. But more and more coaches just seem really burnt out, right? Like they just
Mhm.
seem, from a head coach level, I can't tell you how hard it would be to be a head coach and then maybe try to call plays or maybe try to do anything other than just be a CEO at this point. You see a lot of them even hiring general managers to help with the talent acquisition part.
Mhm.
And it's an almost impossible job to keep all the plates that you need to keep spinning. And I don't blame people for thinking that there might be greener pastures in a coordinator position. You have guys like Sean Elliott at Georgia State, the head coach of Georgia State, to your point, Garrett, of, guys just maybe getting tired of the struggle of being at a program like Georgia State. Spring practice had begun, and he announces that he's leaving to take an assistant position at South
Yeah.
Carolina, and they have to put spring practice on hold while they figure out their head coach position. So I think it says a lot about the state of college football. I do want to zoom in on UCLA though,
Mhm.
because, that's a power program. That's a program with a lot of history. And they're now forced into promoting Deshaun Foster from running back coach to head coach at the 11th hour. They're going to go into the Big Ten with Deshaun Foster as their head coach. And the egg on their face of having their sitting head coach plucked by a conference mate to be their offensive coordinator. How do you bounce back from that if you're UCLA? And what's your temperature on that program in Westwood?
Not easily. You don't bounce back very easily if you're the UCLA Bruins. Um, I don't know exactly what I would say is their move here. Obviously, it's you've done what you can to hire what you have now, right? You've got your staff, you've got your guys in place. It's time for spring practices. We're rolling, right? But man, like it's not a great look. I think you kind of have to be okay with being in the middle for a little bit, and that's somewhere where they've been recently in the Pac-12.
I
They
think they're
haven't
going to be
exactly
lucky
been
if they're in the middle next year.
well. Yeah, we were forgetting already from the Shadow Realm, right? They can beat like a Nebraska and a Purdue and all those. Not to necessarily throw shade at just those teams, but there's a lot of teams I think UCLA could be better than just on paper. Um, But I think they kind of have to be okay not competing for a little bit while they try to build something. And this is kind of the issue you're seeing with a lot of teams as you see some consolidation is you want to be in a conference where you're actually going to get TV revenue and can support a football program. But that also comes with a cost in that, if you're that brand, it's very unlikely that you're the one moving conferences, right? And if so, it's typically not because of like regular factors. It's typically something bigger going on, right? Like what we saw with Texas and Oklahoma, that wasn't just, oh, the Big 12 is bad. It had a lot more to do with what the SEC was doing and thinking expansion to keep up with the trends, right? And so they got kind of plucked as opposed to looking themselves for the solution. So I think there's a chance that UCLA is going to have to just kind of sit in the middle. And there's going to be a lot of teams like this that just kind of have to sit in the middle where maybe formerly they were for sure 8, 9, 10 win team. And now in a better conference, a lot more competition, they're going to have to kind of take a back seat. That's the consequences. But if these programs are serious and if they have good fan bases, they'll pony up the cash. They'll get their facilities figured out. They'll get their NIL figured out, and they'll put together some good teams. I mean, this is exposure in big conferences. So there are going to be some kids in California that choose to stay home so they can play in the Big Ten. And that's a good thing, I think, long term for these teams. It's just not a good thing right now.
Man, if I'm a UCLA Bruin fan, I hope you're right, Garrett. I don't know that they have that fan base that's willing to rally though. Like you see the jokes write themselves about how the Rose Bowl looks for a
Mhm.
typical UCLA game, right? Like there's a lot of times these big out of conference games that they host out there, there's more fans of the away team coming from across the country than, their own home fans. So like, they host Iowa this year. Are there going to be more Iowa fans at the Rose Bowl for that game or UCLA fans?
There's a good chance it's more Iowa
I
fans,
bet it's
man.
Are right? Like that's a
How many
big
Iowa
fan
fans are
base.
gonna be like, "Hey, you wanna go watch your team play at the road?" "Oh, okay, here we go. Let's,
Exactly.
schedule that flight."
Exactly. So I don't know. I really
Yeah.
UCLA I think has got to be really looking themselves in the mirror right now and wondering, what have we gotten ourselves into? What I know we sold our soul for this television revenue check and financially we're going to be better off allegedly. I mean, I don't know what the math is on all the flights that they're going to have to be doing across the country for all their sports, but
Right.
on paper we're going to be better off financially and we're in a stable conference, but it's the Thanos meme of with the little girl of what was the cost, right? Like it's
Everything, yeah.
everything. And I don't know that they have the fan base that's going to pony up for NIL. If they do, it's probably going to go more towards basketball than
Yeah.
anything. Basketball program's not looking great right now either. But um, I'm really concerned. If I'm a UCLA Bruins fan, I'm wondering what have we gotten ourselves into, and is there a path forward? Because right now, you look at the things they're going to make or break college football programs in the future. Investment in NIL, good quality head coaches that know what they're doing and can manage a big operation and a fan base that's passionate and ready to rally behind them. I think they're 0 for 3 in that right now
I
from
I'm
the
gonna
outside
take an
looking in.
I'm going to take a slightly more optimistic view of the future. And I'm going to go big picture, maybe not just UCLA, but there's a lot of teams that fall into this threshold, right? Where they don't necessarily have the most fan support, not super passionate, maybe more of a basketball school, maybe more of a baseball school, and they're kind of okay with their football team being in the middle. This now is going to test athletic departments, not just from a what are you going to do on the big picture, but how do you get your fan base engaged? That's probably going to be the biggest tell of who succeeds going forward is who's got the best fan bases and the best alumni support to show up to those games. Because as much as you want to say like, oh, players are going to pick for this, that, the other, nobody's going to show up for a boring stadium and a bland scene. They want to play in front of a bunch of fans and the big lights. So that's it's
Especially when there's a lot competing for your attention in Los Angeles.
right. 100%. And so for UCLA, it might be a struggle, but there's a lot of teams, and UCLA should be among them, that should be thinking, okay, what do I need to do to enhance the fan experience, right? Do I need to lower concessions just to get people in the door? Do I need to think about entertainment options, in the game? Do I need to think about, game day environment, all that stuff. And that I think leads to a better product long term, right? You can give up if you want to, right? Some of these programs might just give up, and maybe UCLA is among them, right? Maybe UCLA says, you know what, I don't care. We're gonna do our thing, and if it's not good enough, oh well. And if our fans don't show up, right? And if that's the case, like, okay, don't be good. That's fine. I don't care if UCLA is good or not. If they don't want to be good, they don't have to be, right? But if they want to be good, then they'll put the investment in the program, right? Their athletic department will find a way to get people to show up. There's plenty of people in LA. Get them to show up to a game, right? Offer incentives to show up to a game. Do something to enhance the fan experience. Look at some of these minor league baseball teams for some of that. By the way, some of these minor league baseball teams have been struggling to do anything, and they've had some pretty creative ideas for how to get butts and seats. So you might want to look at some of these other types of organizations for how they've been able to get people there and start making your product a little bit better. And that'll get people back in the stands. That'll get people back on campus, excited about your games. And then, yeah, of course, your support's going to grow from there. But it's about that, right? We've been so TV driven for so long. It might be, kind of on the cutting edge of being the in-game experience driven from now on, since you're going to be able to watch any game on any TV station pretty much now, forever.
Well, you heard it here first. UCLA is going to rebrand as the Randy's Donuts for one game in fall 2024 to get sell some merch. So, it's going to be fantastic, a fantastic ride for UCLA one way or the other, and it's going to be interesting. And let me be clear: no program is going to be immune from fan fatigue at this point.
Sure.
I'll just say personal anecdote. I was at a college baseball game on Friday night at a major program, and I heard the chatter behind me was talking. There's a ad on the Jumbotron about the NIL collective at this particular school. And if you know this podcast, you can definitely guess what school I'm talking about. But the chatter right behind me was, why on earth would I give these kids my money so that they can have more money to run around with than me? And
Right.
that's a very valid take for Joe
Valid.
Six Pack fan, right? Like,
Yeah.
why would I donate to an NIL collective for these 17, 18-year-olds to run around with more walking around money than I have in this economy?
For all of it to turn into 7 and 5, right?
Yeah.
That's the big thing that I've been saying is since NIL is kicked up, you're looking at a lot of teams who are going to end up being 7 and 5, 6 and 6 teams. Donors are going to stop if they're really. I'm shelling out millions and millions and millions a year collectively for 7 and 5 and an appearance in the Independence Bowl. Like I'm not doing that anymore. That's not worth my money. And you'll see it balance off, right? This is the thing I've been saying. You will see a leveling of the market with NIL. You can go back to some of our first episodes when we talked about this as it was launching, and I said at some point the market's going to self-regulate. It's going to find a place where it says, oh, this defensive tackle that you just had to keep so he wouldn't go try his option somewhere else, right? He wanted $1 million or something like that, and you weren't willing to give him $1 million, and so he left. Well, okay, if that turns your 7 and 5 team into a 6 and 6 team, you're probably not all that devastated to not shell out the $1 million. So, it's going to self-regulate. It's going to be something where we fix it as a collective college football world. It's more just timing, I think, at this point. And I think part of it is yes, figuring NIL, but yeah, it's going to be about enhancing fan experience as well.
Well, it's going to be that way for the UCLAs of the world. It's going to be that way for the Alabamas of the world. Everybody's going to have to navigate this new normal. Last segment of this episode, and it's February. It's President's Day as we're recording this, but it's never too early to look ahead to the next season. We're ready for our hot takes to start flowing for 2024 because we've already got win totals courtesy of FanDuel for all Power 4 program. Power 4, that's a weird thing to say.
I don't like it.
I don't like it. Doesn't flow off the tongue very well.
Somebody else get your game up so we can have a Power 5 back.
Yeah, American, take notes.
Looking at you, American Conference.
Someone step up, please, so we can have the Power 5 back. But for Power 4 for now, we have win totals for all of these programs, courtesy of FanDuel. We're going to take a look at the SEC tonight, and Garrett has thrown together a fantastic little handy-dandy graphic to show us all 16 SEC programs on one screen, their win total over under for next year. ranging anywhere from 2.5 for Vanderbilt all the way up to 10.5 for Texas and Georgia. Thing that jumps off the screen to me, Garrett, is we don't have an 11.5 in the SEC this year. That was kind of what you had to bet on for Alabama and more recently Georgia in recent years. You had to bet, are they going to go undefeated in the regular season or are they going to slip up once? And we don't have that this year. That's a testament to these more balanced conference schedules, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the big thing that I noticed looking through all these schedules, and man, we did some research looking through these before we actually figured out our teams we're talking about. But like, man, there's so many top end matchups that you normally would only see if you made it to Atlanta. So I'm excited to see kind of where the season goes, watch some of these teams at the top kind of weed themselves out a little bit and see which team can rise to the very, very top. And you can kind of afford to do that now. There really wasn't the incentive structure for that for a while with the 14 playoff. Now that you can get 12, or I mean, if they change it or whatever else, but now at least that it's 12, you have the incentive to go ahead and play some of those tougher games, chance at boosting the strength of schedule, but also not ruining a season if, your number one team loses to the number 5 or something like that.
Yeah, with the way that this is going to set up, you could have a Georgia go 10-2, hit their under, and win the SEC championship game in Atlanta and still be a top 4 seed and get a bye in the new college football playoff. It's a new
Just
normal
crazy.
it's a new normal we're all going to have to adjust to as it comes about. But Garrett, we're going to have a ton of time this offseason to break down these schedules, break down the win totals. We'll of course have our preview series in the summer talking about each of these teams in depth, but you and I each picked a way too early best bet on SEC win totals. We picked one team. We could have picked an over, or we could have picked an under to highlight in on. I'm going to throw it over to you first. Who do you have as your SEC best bet as it stands here in February?
So my best bet, and this is again, we're gonna say subject to change, and there's a lot of stuff that could happen, and right? But my best bet right now is that LSU will go under 9.5. I think this is a 9-win team. If I'm just picking it right now, I'm picking them at 9 wins exactly. To obviously to just kind of go through it, here's kind of what their schedule looks like. They got USC to start the season. That's going to be in Las Vegas, so it'll be a bunch of fun. We're looking forward to that one. That's a Sunday night game as well. It seems like it's kind of crazy watching LSU play some of these Sunday games recently, and I feel like it's been the last couple of years at least they've been doing this. So, anyways, they got that. They got Nichols. That'll be a win. That's kind of their tune-up game there. They got South Carolina. You could consider that a tune-up game maybe this year as well. UCLA probably not going to be that good. South Alabama a little bit plucky. Maybe not as good as they have been in the past, but a pretty decent team. Then they get their bye week, and then here's where the schedule starts to turn. They come out of their bye week against Ole Miss. Ole Miss, I think, is going to be a pretty dang good team. I think Ole Miss is going to give them a real run there, so that's a possibility for a loss there. They've got Arkansas, which I don't think will be very good, at Texas A&M. They haven't done very well their last several trips to Kyle Field. It's been a little while. Obviously, a new head coach this year, but it's been a little while since they've won at Kyle Field. They do get a bye week before they play Alabama. They do Florida, Vandy, and Oklahoma. And that's kind of where we sit that. So I think that they're really on the hook for a loss against Alabama and Ole Miss. I think those are probably two that I would say feel pretty confident sitting here in February. They're going to lose those two games. And then it's really just about what do you think about Texas A&M at home and then Oklahoma at the end of the season, or even that first game against USC. This is still a good USC offense. I know that things haven't necessarily worked out as much as Lincoln Riley, had hoped to at this point at USC, but it's still a really good USC offense, and I expect them to field a really good team next year. But why LSU dropping off, right? Number one, I don't think they've done very much to address the defensive concerns. They, turned some stuff over and they figured some stuff out kind of, but I don't think that they've done enough to address their concerns. I don't see the massive transfers in that are going to be big difference makers. And even if you saw those guys, talent really hasn't been the issue the last couple of years with LSU on defense. It's been scheme. It's been guys being out of position. It's been guys being put in the wrong position to succeed, right? We saw it a couple of years ago, Harold Perkins trying to be a run defense type linebacker. That's not who he is. He's a speed guy. He's an edge guy. He's not a run defense linebacker. You put him in that position, he's not going to succeed. Maybe they figure out their scheme, but I'm going to put that in the wait till I see it to believe it category. And then the other big one here is, look, they're losing a bunch. They had an electric offense this year, but they're losing a Heisman Trophy quarterback and two, I would consider them guaranteed first round wide receivers. Anytime that happens, there's going to be a steep drop off. You can go ahead and look at what happened last time LSU lost a Heisman Trophy quarterback and two first round wide receivers. They had the year 2020 and they were booty butt. They were not very good that year. COVID, blah, blah, blah. Everyone had the same conditions. Okay. What I'm trying to say is it's always difficult to turn over a team with that much talent and expect to see the same kind of results, especially when you see Ole Miss loading up on talent, Alabama doing their thing. It's still Alabama. Kalen DeBoer just coached the national championship game. He's going to be a good coach. Maybe not what Nick Saban was, but still a pretty dang good coach. And then, yeah, there's a couple other teams on this schedule. It's the SEC. You could still see a team kind of sneak up and get them. So I think this could be some rough sledding for LSU. I see them as a 9-3 team, which means they hit their under.
Yeah, you make a good case for the Tigers to drop off a bit. And you're right to point out that they're losing a ton of production on that offensive side of the ball. I think Garrett Nussmeier is a great quarterback. And I think that he is the offense, I think, is going to be okay. I'm concerned that they haven't done enough to fix the defense, and they still have time. There's going to be another portal window, right? But right off the bat, you play Lincoln Riley, and he is going to put up some points on your defense if you're not ready. I'm not concerned about LSU. I don't think that USC's defense is going to be fixed to the point that they can stop LSU. But, if LSU scores 42 and USC scores 45, that wouldn't surprise me week one. And the schedule
that would surprise me. I don't think LSU has that much firepower.
Okay, well, there you go. So, if you're worried about them scoring, then that's two things to worry about.
I don't necessarily think that they're going to not score. I just think it's going to take a step back. I don't think they're going to have an electric offense. I think this is going to be kind of what happened with Ohio State this year, where you had a really, really good, elite quarterback and some real talent at the wide receiver spot, and you lose a bunch of that, right? We saw the regression for Ohio State, and you could say, oh, everything was the same and the system was the same and everything else. Oh, but McCord, he was terrible. Well, last year we didn't think so. Last year we thought McCord was, Heisman watch, and oh, he might be really good. He's the quarterback at Ohio State. He must be really good. He sat for a couple years. He knows the system. He's really smart. He's got lots of talent. That's what we all thought about McCord, and then he wasn't that good this year. I think he was hated on a little bit too much, but he wasn't that good. So, yeah, maybe Nussmeier is a really, really good quarterback, but maybe he's kind of just okay. Maybe he's not quite what Jalen Daniels was, and he's not going to be, a Heisman Trophy quarterback in year one. I think that's reasonable to suspect. When you take away two massive targets on the outside, that's going to bring down your offensive production. So I think they score 30 against USC. But do I think their defense can hold USC under 40? I don't think so.
Well, and Brian Kelly hasn't exactly been ready to go week one these last couple of years at LSU either. Yep. So, if you're telling me USC's not a lock, then 9.5 becomes very sketchy very quickly. And it's all going to depend on, how are they catching these teams? Are they catching Ole Miss on a bad day? Are they catching Arkansas fired up at home like they typically are when they play LSU? Or are they catching them when they've already given up on the season? Is A&M ready to go? Alabama, what are they going to look like? Has Florida given up on the year? Has Oklahoma given up on the year in the last week of the year? That's kind of the wild card for me with that schedule. They have a lot of teams that could have maybe already packed it up and said 1, 2, 3 Cancun when they played them. But if those teams are still up and running and operational, then they're going to give LSU a lot of trouble, and they could very easily find themselves below 9.5, especially if they don't get USC week one. I think that's going to set the tone for the year, to be sure.
Right.
Well, I'll go ahead and go to my way too early SEC win total best bet. I'm going to take a more positive slant than Garrett did. Garrett took an under. I'm going to take an over, and I'm going to talk to you about the Tennessee Volunteers. They're sitting there at 8.5 right now as we sit in February. And I think that's grossly low for a team that I think is going to be have improved quarterback play. I think Nico is going to take a step up from where Joe Milton was. He still has, a great number one receiver in Brew McCoy to throw the ball to. They got some really solid transfers in. They have a top 15 recruiting class coming in. The defense is going to be a little bend and break like it always has been over the last few years under Josh Heupel, but I'm not going to question the pass rush, and I'm not going to question, stepping up and getting big opportunistic plays, because we've seen that time and time again with Tennessee under Josh Heupel. So if you're telling me they've got good to great quarterback play and great to elite pass rush, that's a recipe for a really solid season. They've got the schedule to possibly make some noise. Let me run through it real quick. I'll give you the highlights. Only 4 true road games in this entire schedule. And those 4 true road games are at Oklahoma, at Arkansas, at Georgia, and at Vanderbilt. 3 of those 4, I would say, are extremely winnable. I don't know what Oklahoma's going to be next year. I'm not as high on the Sooners as some are.
Yeah,
Vegas
same.
is not as high on them either at the 7.5 win total. I'm kind of penciling that in as a big win to start off the season for Tennessee at this point. Arkansas, we don't know what they're going to be with a whole new offensive coaching staff and a new quarterback situation. Georgia's going to be tough, obviously, and Vandy's Vandy, right? I think you're
Right.
looking, if you can win 3 of those 4, and you just need to win, 5 more, sorry, 6 more, 6 more of your home games, and three of those are just absolute gimmies, then that's a good recipe for me for hitting this over at 8.5. They've got Chattanooga, a neutral site game against NC State and Charlotte, Kent State, and UTEP as their non-conference games. 4-0 right there. You're sitting at 7. Then you just got to get 2 of the 3 of Florida, Alabama, and Kentucky and Mississippi State. The wins are adding up for me, Garrett, and I think this is going to be a really exciting offense. They're going to put up a lot of points, and they got a lot of teams on their schedule that I just, even if the defense isn't elite, I don't know that they can keep up offensively with Tennessee, and that might be the recipe this year.
For sure. For me, the big question about Tennessee was, what's up at the quarterback spot, right? Because last year we thought, okay, well, Milton's going to be the guy. Didn't really work out. With Nico coming in, I think Nico is going to be a lot better. He showed a lot in the bowl game. And, obviously anything could happen. A good bowl game does not next year's quarterback make. But at the same time, I think he showed a lot in terms of what he can bring to the table. And so I look at that, and then I also combine it. Yeah, it's a really favorable schedule. I think they can sweep their out of conference. Like you're saying, the road games should be somewhat easy. Oklahoma, I think they'll be a team that'll be better in the second half of the year. I don't think that they'll start super strong, but I do think they figure it out as the year goes along. Arkansas, that should be a dub. And then you get, Vanderbilt, that should be a dub. Georgia, you're probably going to lose that one. And then you get Bama at home. Obviously, I think a lot of people expect that to be a loss. Anything could happen. And then, it's like Florida, probably not the best season for Florida. Kentucky, probably not the best season for Kentucky. Mississippi State, also not expecting a whole lot. So there's some real wins on this schedule where I think you would have to say, even with a mediocre team, I think you would expect a lot of these games to be won by the mediocre team in that situation. And then if you just give Tennessee better chances than a mediocre, right? If they're just like a good offense with an okay defense, or like even a really good offense with a bad defense. We've seen that kind of work for some teams in the past, not to championship levels, but to 9 wins. Yeah, they can get to 9 wins on this schedule. I think there's really only 2 games I would say are for sure losses. After that, I find, up to 10 wins for Tennessee.
And that Alabama game, crazier things have happened than them
Mm-hmm.
beating Alabama at home. So,
Yeah.
if you tell me that they can get past Alabama, then you're talking about a real shot at the college football playoff.
They would have beaten them 2 years in a row if it wasn't for the fact they forgot how to play football in the second half.
Exactly. So, and that's with Nick Saban. So
that was with Nick Saban, yeah.
I see only one probable loss on this schedule, and that doesn't mean they're going to go 11-1, obviously. But I think in a vacuum, that Alabama game's a toss-up to me. Like, it's straight up 50-50 if I'm
Yeah.
having to pick it right now in February with what I don't know about both teams. So,
Well, and the kind of good news is it sandwiches really nice on their schedule too. They get a bye
yep,
week at Arkansas, Florida, and then Alabama, then another bye week. So
yep.
they kind of get to sandwich their tough game. The schedule is very favorable for Tennessee this year. I don't think this is a championship team, but if you were saying, end of the year, Tennessee's a 10-win team, wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, and 10 wins is college football playoff this year, most
There's
likely,
a real chance, yeah.
unless some crazy things happen nationally that keep them out of it. I'll throw one more in here at the end because I got to shout them out. Vandy's over under is 2.5, and they have Alcorn State, Georgia State, and Ball State on their schedule. So Vandy, if we don't hit the over, it's time to disband the football program. We gotta have some real conversations about pouring that NIL money into baseball and remodeling our atrocious basketball gym, because there's just no excuse for not hitting the over with those two.
They should find a way to remodel that basketball gym anyways, man. That's a disaster.
Yeah, it's a fossil, an archaeological wonder, the eighth wonder of the world, maybe of the ancient world, but it's time to
That's
not
the
play.
Kibby Dome, man. I don't know what you're talking about, man.
It's time to not play Division I Power 5 basketball there. We'll end the football show on that note on Vanderbilt's basketball gym. Guys, make sure you're locked in on our social media at 3TechPod on Instagram and Twitter. Make sure you've liked this video, subscribed, and please, please, please share with your friends if you enjoy our content. We want to grow our family here and make sure that we can talk ball with as many people as possible as we build for 2024. For Garrett Turney, for Mitch Mason, I'm Trey Reeves. We'll see you next time.
Gracious him. How about